coming.
Thank you very much.
And you know, our exchange started at 7 in the morning. You were up since sort of God knows when because you're still on UK time. We did a stop at the Digital Media Zone and a mentoring session with 8 female founders there this morning. And then this afternoon we were at Mars for something similar. And so, you know, we're grateful for you making this trip and doing all of this and only as part of your personal adventure. So we are grateful for that. What did I miss in your introduction in terms of some kind of the highlights of your work experience, your career journey? Is there something that you think that?
Well, this afternoon when we met with the girls,
right,
at Mars. It's a fantastic name. It sort of struck me that I had to introduce myself and sort of typify. I mean, what are the things that you would describe somebody by with? And definitely a builder. And you know, and you sort of think of what's a builder? And somebody who wants to add value and build. And I used to say early on in my career, I'm only going to go to work if I can add something to the professional experience. Otherwise, I may as well sit at home and change diapers. Not that there's anything wrong with changing diapers, but I sort of had this feeling that, you know, I wanted to not maybe prove for myself that I could do it, but also you know, create something. And definitely that's still with me. Sometimes I sort of wonder, you know, particularly after the 5 years of founding, you know, refounding some part of Soup Media, but definitely then founding 5 leading websites in Russia, which is a large country with lots of opportunities but also lots of challenges, and exited in a way that had sort of engineered, and it all came together at one point. And then you think, well, maybe I should then, your whole world tells you that you should now take some time off and do nothing and enjoy yourself, and you sort of think, really what I enjoy actually it's another new project where I can take what I've done before and, you know, take the learnings from what you've done before, because I think it's all a journey. I'm very big in yoga, and then it's all a journey. But it's a journey, and it's a real exciting thing if you can take your learnings from what you've done into your new gig. And, you know, build upon it and do things in a better, smarter way, and use technology in a smarter way, but also connect people. And you know, it's fascinating wherever you go. You call me a global citizen, which is a huge compliment. But you know, you always meet people everywhere, and the world is actually quite small. I can give you tons of examples of where, in the strangest places, you meet somebody who's like 1 or only 2 tiers away in your LinkedIn network. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
So let's so you've several times over the course of the day described yourself as a relauncher, and I in the introduction talked about sort of major pivots. You know, so I think, you know, there's sort of congruency between this term relauncher and this notion of doing a pivot for a startup. So maybe, you know, give us a couple of instances where you feel like you took a business and you were making a major shift, or maybe the sub-story in terms of the relaunch and the scenario, and what were some of the challenges. What did you bring?
Well, I think Soup is a great example, and you know, you already, I think you introduced me with the sort of corporate media experience that I had in the UK. And I worked in the UK for 8 years for 3 major media companies, and always as the, you know, Dennis is the in-house entrepreneur. Telegraph, yeah.
That's the one I've heard of. Time,
Telegraph, TV. And Dennis calls himself the in-house, in-resident entrepreneur. And I'm sort of the in-resident digital evangelist. I always say to people, after I've done this career, I'm going to go into work for the church that pays me most money to convert people into that particular religion. Not very nice to say, but I felt I was really good at actually converting traditional media people into making them understand that this digital thing is never going to go away. And slightly torturing experience as well, because, you know, a traditional, I don't know if there's anybody here who's worked for a newspaper or has worked for a traditional newspaper, and we know the editor-in-chief is definitely the man, usually a man, who is in charge, and, you know, his world, his law is what we all live by. And to tell that person that one day his newspaper may disappear is not a nice message. And I spent 9 months trying to convince the Sunday Times editor that he had to meet with me. And I was a little bit stubborn. I had every Friday morning a meeting with him at 11 o'clock, and he would always not show up, or he'd sit outside. And I stayed. I thought, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to sit here, and one day he's going to wake up. He did, actually. Anyway, so after that sort of really fascinating experience, I think, because I was lucky to work with leading media brands, and you get to know the editorial side of the business, and that really drives it. And I'm a strong believer of content. Content's never ever going to go away. I mean, if you remember 2-3 years ago, people say, "Oh, content's nothing. We can just get some BuzzFeed content, and it will all be fine." And guess what? Netflix will all paying £5.99 a month to watch real good content. So it was an amazing experience, but also realised that the digital world was actually going a little bit faster than the sort of traditional media companies, and then the opportunity came whilst I was working for TV, which is hugely glamorous compared to newspapers. There's always an advertising party and another party. I really enjoyed that time. You meet
TV's good then.
TV's good. TV's very good, but incredibly slow. And I got a phone call from a Russian entrepreneur / mini-gark in those days, who had bought the Live Journal, a US-founded blogging platform. And if you remember watching The Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg's first post to the girlfriend, where he writes publicly that she's an absolute idiot and he didn't want to go out with her anymore, he wrote that on Live Journal. So it was the first blogging platform, very popular in Russia, particularly by those people who wanted to voice their opinion and did not have the opportunity to do that in a newspaper. Man bought the site, then realised that he didn't know how to run it, and he needed somebody to come in and help him run it and start making some money and actually do other things as well. So he created a fund, and through his son, who was in the same school as my son, and funny connections, he realised there was this woman who spoke Russian and lived in Russia before and knew how to make money in digital media. And that was the call. Hello, calling from Moscow. I heard that you know how to speak Russian and you can live here and you know how to make money. I'm like, yes, that's probably right. Anyway, he flew me over, not in his private jet, on a normal economy class ticket, and we sort of hit it off because he had a really, in my view, a really good understanding of where the web or our digital life still needs content, and on top of Live Journal realised that we need to have quality content as well. So in a sort of roundabout way, but I still believe that there are actually 3 pillars in creating successful, particularly media businesses online. You need the UGC, because that's what we're now used to, producing our own content and user generated. But you still need the quality as well, otherwise you get no moderation, and maybe we may all think that we're amazing writers and potentially new journalists, but it is sort of a profession. Some journalists are better than others, so the mixture between UGC and the professional, and then the tools and services, and that actually every successful media platform you look at right now actually consists of those 3. And to be able to do that without legacy, without the very bright, rather annoying and sometimes rather arrogant editor-in-chief who still believes his newspaper is going to be the one and only important thing, I had an opportunity to sort of do what I always thought had to be done, and do it my way. That was quite nice. I thought I can just do it my way, and I can show those people with whom I've worked that you can actually create a digital media company and make money. Rather bold statement, because everybody still believes that it couldn't be done. So coming back to your question about founding and refounding, Live Journal definitely needed to be refounded because it was created by one person and sort of virally grew into something that became incredibly important in Russia, but it wasn't making any money, and nobody really knew how to deal with that beast over there that produced an awful lot of content and very loyal users.
About 10 million.
Well, when I left, it had about 50, but 50 million unique users. When I came in, it was about 6 million unique users. And 14% of those users actually created content, which is a lot more than, if you look at Twitter, for example, it's 2%. And so we took that thing, rather big, and relaunched it into a traffic and UGC machine that actually fed into new digital properties that we created. So we created the largest sports site in Russia, the largest travel site. Sort of told ourselves we're going to found a new travel site and needs to be #1 in 1 year. It's slightly bold and arrogant, but I also feel that it creates quite a bit of focus, and particularly if you look at a market that wasn't very crowded, we sort of thought, well, if we do it, we may as well go after the #1 position. So we travel, sport, parenting, and sort of followed the ad market as well.
So really pivoted, I guess, to your, from a focus on content to a focus on actually understanding where the money was in the market.
Well, I don't think that was a pivot. I think it's always, we all know, and definitely is my focus. If you do something and you're not trying to understand where the money could come from, then it's lovely.
Yeah.
It becomes a charity, but that's not going to fly. And you make money because customers like what you do. So if customers don't like what you do, or they don't know that you're there, then you haven't done your job.
I'm sort of trying on some of this sort of traditional, or not traditional, far from traditional, but this sort of latest language in startup land. So the pivot is sort of one of those keywords, and then
it's a kickboxing word.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure if it actually means anything, and that's what I'm trying to establish here. And then there's this lean methodology, and this idea of rapid iteration. So this in that switch or that sort of relaunch, can you remember any time when, in terms of developing the technology platforms that you were really, taking this approach of rapid iteration and going out with, a minimum viable product and building around it and these kinds of things?
Well, I wasn't definitely using the word minimum viable product or pivoting or rapid iteration.
Rapid iteration.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you said rapid iteration. Rapid iteration.
Yeah.
Agile. It's all agile.
Right.
I was trying to build a business that would be attractive for lots of customers, but at the same time was able to serve a lot of customers globally, particularly on LiveJournal, without adding new people in each country where you went to. So I don't think it's startup language, but it's sort of, I think it's the same thing.
Well, did you go out with did you launch first and build later, or did you find yourself, really trying to get the product perfect first?
No, I don't believe in that at all. I think the beauty about digital is that you can engage your customer every day from day one that you launch your product, and I think those products are the best ones, where you try to listen to customers, potential customers, understand the market, trial and error.
So how do you do that? How do you understand the customer's needs first?
Well, it depends if you're in this sort of mass market proposition. If I look at the travel business, for example, how many people are there in Russia? How many people have a passport? How many people traveled last year? What's the market? How much did they spend? We realized 90% of people were spending it on tour holidays, 10% were spending it on bespoke. How many of them book on the internet? And realized that if you then realize of the 400 billion ruble that was spent on travel, and only 40 billion was spent online booking, that that's going to go to 50% online booking. And those people need to find a way how to get to a destination and book a holiday. And we realized there were very few TV programs, magazines about travel and the inspiration, and wanted to launch something for a growing middle class that wanted to go on holiday. So you start with analyze what's there, and then you realize that how do you navigate where you want to go? It's interest, it's countries, it's cities, and I think that one of the unique things we did was realize that in a country like Russia, where people had not traveled that much before, that a really detailed catalogue of countries and things to do, and we launched, Amsterdam in half a day, and Amsterdam in 2 days, and 7 things you need to, long before BuzzFeed came at 7, we had 7 things to do in Amsterdam, not 10. 7 things to do in London, and the things you need to, and so using content, but actually user generated as well. So we'd start with a team of 10 editors, but actually those 10 editors soon became 100, because when you are traveling, you actually would like to share what you've seen. You know, TripAdvisor, that's why TripAdvisor is so popular, and try to automate that very early on. And it's one of the other things I talked about today is I'm looking at a company right now that really has the philosophy in mind that everything they do, they want to try to automate it, and automate stuff that actually nobody else is automating, and so thus trying to really create scale. And I think, so what during the relaunch and launch and founding of a business, intuitively I have in mind that you need to create it using scale. So I think not having VC funding, where sometimes I can see sometimes people get slightly too much money, maybe not in Canada, but definitely in Silicon Valley, and we add people, that's not always delivering, I think, a sustainable product. When you talked about Esther before, and what Esther and I have in common is definitely, and we spent evenings talking about it, drinking tea, about building sustainable businesses. You sort of look at a lot of the stuff that's being built, rightly or wrongly. I mean, it's great to build a business that you think, well, I'm going to build a business because I want this company to buy it in 5 years. It's not a bad thing, if only the companies who buy those smaller companies could actually make it work, and that doesn't always work. And I hate waste, and so does Esther, and maybe that's where the refounding comes from as well. And I think there's a lot of properties, and I've got one right now that was huge brand equity. It's a bit like Classmates in the US. I don't know if there's one in. But in the UK it's called Friends Reunited. It was sort of the first social network for people. First almost entertainment experience to come online, that brought them online, and it went like this, and then it was sold and sold again, and it almost died. And it was in my portfolio of the company I'm running right now, and everybody thought I was going to close it. And then I called the founders, and I said, you guys haven't been involved for 10 years. I just can't close it, because it's a great brand equity. Still people remember that time when they first went online, Friends Reunited. I mean, lots of people met up with old friends from school. And I said, it's got a database with all schools in the UK, and everybody who went to those schools. You can't throw that out. It's a bit like an antique chest that you got from your grandmother. You can't really chuck that out, can you?
In your background, you have publishing, you have digital media, there's some pharma, right? In there as well.
Medical devices.
Medical devices. We have Japan. We have Russia. We have Europe and the UK. So if you're a founder and you don't have a question for this woman, I gotta ask, why not? So get your question ready. But before we, open it up for questions, a couple of things, quotes that have stuck with me from our email exchanges with Esther along the lines of this theme. And if you're using Twitter, please 40 forward with the hashtag in front. So the theme of 40 forward and sort of the special issues or the particular challenges. So one of the things that really stuck with me is in Esther's email, she said, look, we'd much rather be, role models. We want to be successful business people. We don't want to be commentators on the plight of women or the challenges of women. A little bit about that philosophy and how it sits with you.
Yeah, I totally agree with her. I used to think it was nonsense to go to an all-women event to cheer each other up and to say, look at us, all women were great, and it's us against them. Because it's all about, where can you add value, and it's about being successful. At the end of the day, if you make money, you're successful, it doesn't really matter whether you're man or woman. But I've recently sort of discovered that there are lots of women out there who are really capable and intelligent and could do extremely well. And I definitely believe that a professional world in which we have a better balance between men and women is good. It's good for all of us, good for society, good for business. And there are still many places where there are too few women. And I changed my tone. I thought it always had to do with the fact that these women did not want, but I also realized that these women need to be encouraged, that women need to be encouraged a little bit more. We can do it. Women are not like men and men are not like women. I mean, we can talk about that for hours. And that maybe I could help women to, not only in the places where I work, where I try to spot talent and help them, and that's a big part of my role, because I can't do it myself. I have to do it with people and I have to get the best out of them. And I realise that it's quite important to talk to women, all ages, all kind of professions, to share my story. Not because it's so unique, but it sort of amplifies, and we share tips on how to do it and how to be more confident and successful in the workplace, and how to understand men a little bit better in the workplace, how to be non-emotional and very professional, have some fun. So I agree with Esther. It's not about us against them. It's not about the difficulties as a woman. It's more about how we all, as women and men, can work better together.
Another thing that stuck with me that she said was, never take a job that you know how to do. So what does that mean? I mean, we talked earlier about this, how a man will look at a list on a job posting, and there'll be 7 out of 10 things that he feels that he has, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm a dead ringer. And a woman will look at that list and say, wow, there's 3 things I don't have, right? So, what is...
Yeah, I think that's, and I don't want to say all women are the same, but it's definitely, and it was funny this afternoon when I shared that story of, there's definitely moments when you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, oh, they're going to find out. They're going to find out that I don't know everything, and I made a mistake. And I think over time you learn to talk to yourself and say, calm down, go back to sleep, it's all going to be fine. And I think that's more of a, if you sit down with other female women, professional women, we all share that. And so I think we should just acknowledge it and understand that, this is who we are, and let's play on the things that we do well and we share well. I think women in digital work well because digital is all about chatting and shopping, and those are things that we learn really well. And really, I think the moment you know the things that you're not very good at, or the things that you don't really like doing so well, that you concentrate on actually improving them. I shared this afternoon. I didn't really like public speaking, and here I am again. It helps when you have a microphone.
Yes. Yeah.
So I agree with Esther. I think if you want to build, actually it's good to go into a place where you don't know everything, because if you know everything, then the curiosity is gone. I recently went into my new gig, which is family history, Ancestry. It's not the company Ancestry, we're actually competing with them. And I knew nothing about family history, and I actually laughed when they approached me. I was like, family history? I mean, I do sport, I do glamour, I do fashion, but I don't do family history. And then, I looked at the market globally, and I thought, it's definitely, we can't have a global market where there's only one player, basically, and the rest is sort of circling around them. And I forced myself to understand the language and the players, and you then have to take a deep dive. And I think you come into it with a sort of a new, fresh perspective, which is really useful for a business, and you force yourself to get that sort of 360. Sometimes if you know too much about the industry, it's difficult to be objective about it. So, that's what I definitely share that with her.
Last quote from Esther Dyson, and we'll banish her from this conversation forever. But this was, we did a Twitter chat leading up to this, and it was widely quoted, like 60 times. bunch of retweets, but she said, old joke, but true, you gotta have, you gotta have experience to get a good joke. No, what was it? Oh man, but I'm not.
It's on camera.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's about knowing the things you don't know.
Yeah, you basically experiences, you have to have great experiences to be successful, but, unless you aren't successful, you don't have great experiences. Something to that.
Yeah. So if you've only been successful,
right.
You've never.
So it's about failure, acceptance.
Yeah, and I think that's it's extremely useful. Do you not?
Yeah.
It's as my son says, is the perfect storm is the one where he said, as long as get advice from my 18-year-old boy who says, Mum, if something goes wrong in your company, as long as it's not the same problem as you've had before, then you're going well, then it's all perfect, then it's good, It means that you're not making the same mistake again. I was like, okay, thank you very much. He said, that's my little lesson. He's also the boy who, when he was 16, said to me, I don't understand how you can run a digital media. You know nothing about computers. You don't even know where the shortcuts are on your laptop, on your keyboard. I said, no, I don't know them. I've got people who can tell me how to do this. He said, well, I said, but what would you do then? He said, well, I would just tell people what to do. I'd write them an email and tell them what to do. I said, okay, so it's not about managing people. I said, no, you just tell them what to do. And I thought, gosh, this is really, I wasn't sure whether I could qualify that as a young person's opinion, right, or a male opinion.
Shall we vote? Young people, male.
Well, it was very sweet. Right. It's trying to get the best out of people. Yeah.
Okay. Who's got a question? Go ahead.
Goedenavond. You spoke about, that's Dutch by the way.
Yeah, goedenavond.
You spoke about the time when you were so persistent at that Telegram, right? Every Friday at 11 you were there. Can you recall the time or what it was that was sort of the turning point, or the, what was it that sort of took him?
I solved the problem for him.
Tell us.
And that's mostly, I think you convince people when you actually can answer a question for them or solve a problem. It was a news event. I mean, editors go by news events, and I was working in London, but there was a theatre kidnapping in Russia, if you remember, years ago. It was a theatre called Nordost, and the Chechen terrorists went in and took 250 people hostage. And a very brave journalist in Moscow, whom I knew, actually walked into the theatre twice, but the paper only went out on Sunday, and the guy walked into the theatre on Thursday, and maybe Friday morning. So on Friday morning I was there again, and I said, John, I know Mark went into the theatre. On Sunday, that's going to be old news. And, this is, it was a big story. He went in and spoke to the terrorists, and he had it on camera, and this is before iPhones. And, so he could really see the benefit at that point in time. That was...
The faster you can solve the problem.
It's not about me, it's about him.
Yeah. It's a demonstration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Michael, are you still trying to get people back?
That'd be great if we could pass the mic around for your question. Yeah. Go ahead, Andre.
Oh, no mic? Okay.
Hello? Just press the button. Go ahead. Don't worry about it. Hello? Yeah.
So I found your presentation highly relevant to what my company is doing. I'm a co-founder and startup here in Toronto, and we're all about content. And I was wondering, in your opinion, what do you think are the top 3 problems online media publishers face today?
There's different categories. But if I look at the traditional players, who are now all trying to put content behind paywalls and getting people to sort of like, before you enter the store you already have to pay. I think they need to think more about their customers and, you know, how to engage customers and really understand what they do. When I speak to my colleagues in the media industry, there's still a perception that quality news is only, quality content are only created within these traditional bastions, sort of. Whereas actually quality or relevant information is also created by you and me, and the combination between those. And actually what's relevant today is not only the quality of the news, but how it's being delivered and how it plays into what's happening in the world. I don't know if anybody knows how BuzzFeed works, which is hugely popular. BuzzFeed computers analyze right now what's being talked about right now on the web, and they produce content within 15 minutes that is about what's being discussed right now. Is that always of high quality? No, it's not, but at least it's relevant because people are looking for, I wouldn't say the MH370 because that's already old news, but what is relevant and what customers, readers, users want today is different from what it used to be, and that, I think that transition is not always understood by traditional media companies. They still think from the authoritative voice of the content creators, but you know, we are all, it's sort of power to the people, and in certain audiences they sort of, when I put that fist and power to the people, and people think, well, is she a communist or not? But it is, you know, we are, social media really influences what we do. It doesn't determine everything, but it's a combination of. So I think number one is to be receptive of this more democratized world. And number two is embracing of technology. You know, technology is an enabler. It's not just that thing on the budget that you have to decide about, but it's enabling and therefore listening to and working with the born digitals. We were talking with Dennis about an event where he went to, and there was an 8-year-old boy that built a robot, and you know, 8-year-olds can build robots now. You don't have to be a genius to be able to build a robot. So the understanding of you know, technology as an enabler, and you know, I'm not an engineer, but I'm a user, and I do understand that technology drives growth, and it should drive creativity. And I think thirdly, to be more creative in their business models, you know, where to find revenue, how to create revenue, and that's probably more working through partnership as well.
So I have a question as well. You mentioned your 3 pillars for success for digital media, and you mentioned user-generated content, quality, and then tools and services. Would you be able to break it down for us in terms of, you should try to set like 30% for this, 30% for that pillar, and 10%? Could you, is there some math that, some
I don't think there is math. Because if you take a travel site, for example, if you take the travel site as the example, we started up with a lot of professional content because, you know, you need to have maps of the world, you need to have 7 things to do in Paris, and that evolved, that content bit evolved from very professional to user voice added to it. So now probably it's about 80% user and 20% professional. And tools and services are, I mean, if it's a travel site, it's very important to have an engine to book your flights, to book theatre tickets, etc. And that's an evolving game, but that makes being in media so much fun today, and being in digital publishing so much fun. I always say that, and actually the fourth thing about your traditional media companies, when you were running a newspaper 20 years ago, the 2 main questions as a CEO you had to think about were, how many newspapers did I sell yesterday and how many ads did I sell for tomorrow's paper? Because the content engine would work anyway. There was no creativity. I mean, yeah, very creative, but that creativity, the template as to how we put this newspaper together was already there. There was nothing entrepreneurial about creating yet another newspaper. And I say this with huge respect because, I mean, You know, I think what editors do is, but it's not creative in a way. So those two questions, I mean, important questions, because the business meant that, you know, you had to know all the advertisers, you had to take them out for a golf trip, etc. And how many newspapers you sold yesterday, am I still happy with my distributors, and was it a rainy day yesterday, so yes, pouring rain, so 10% less sales, understand my business. Today the business is so much more complicated, would some people say. I'm rather glass half full, and therefore I would say it's much more exciting. But you have many more decisions to make and many more parameters to think about in your business model, and it moves much faster. So therefore, coming back to your question, it is, I think it would be sort of 1985 to think that I can give you the answer as in 32% UGC and 37% professional, and then what is it, 31% of tools and services. It doesn't work that way. It would be too easy.
So you obviously have a very large background in digital media, but you said you also worked for medical device in that sector. I wanted to ask how you saw the future of those two sort of fields kind of colliding.
Working in medical devices, I learned that with my business degree, I could actually talk with quite a bit of authority about my medical devices, because, you know, they gave you proper training, and, you know, when this pacemaker goes to this patient, I mean, that was all very well done. So it wasn't, I mean, I was never a doctor, but I knew how these devices could work with the body. Then forgot all about medical devices and started working in digital media, and it's when, and we'll have to mention Esther again, because it's one of the other topics that we talk about all the time, and how digital can help medical, but make sure we all become much more aware of our body, and you know, it's today, I think, through the quantified self. And I actually lost my up band the other day, so...
What's up?
Up is the one that measures your steps and your... remember how I took you walking today?
Right.
Everywhere. Poor Michael had to walk. He wanted to take a taxi, but I'm like... Because I now, you know, have to do my 10,000 steps a day. And it measures your sleep as well, which is highly addictive. So I think those worlds definitely come together.
I kind of like the walk, by the way. I wasn't really resistant to the walk. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, good talk still. They walk and talk. I think it's a really exciting area, and it shows that, you know, I mean, the digital space initially was all about communication and entertainment, you know, and then so from communication to entertainment to shopping, and now we get to digital, where digital really starts to make a difference in what we do, in how we farm, and how we run medical clinics, doctors on Skype. I mean, that's only the start. I mean, a doctor should be able to measure your blood pressure from a distance, not when you're in his room. Actually, the business I run right now, I mean, we are digitizing records that nobody would digitize if it wasn't for us as a commercial partner, which allows you to find your ancestors without having to go to the library. And it's not only to make sure you don't have to walk to the library, but we're creating digital legacy. So the digital legacy, the digital monitoring of your own body, in a way that's also measured, because we don't want to look at ourselves as being robots, but without boring you to death, where I think that's the exciting part of digital, and the exciting part of technology. So, you know, it's not only about creating the next Angry Birds.
Okay, so your network is amazing. You've worked for Rupert Murdoch. You have had Esther Dyson as an advisor. You know, you're heading off from here. You mentioned
New York
and other places, and there are names involved. And so what is it about, let's say, Rupert Murdoch, in terms of his management style and strengths and weaknesses, and somebody like Esther or yourself, that you know, that needs to be different, because, you know, the differences between men and women?
First of all, Rupert, I think is, there's people love him, hate him, they think he's amazing. I mean, and why is he amazing? It's somebody that wants to build, still wants to build, is still very curious about new things, and we should never stop being curious and to look around and to. There's a great, I have to make a sidestep. There's a great documentary about Vogue magazine called the September issue, and I don't know if anybody's seen it here. But watch it because it's good about digital creativity. And Grace, the fashion editor, sits in the back of a cab. And she says, whenever I go to a new place, I look around. I'm not on my phone, I look around and I sort of think about her when I arrive in a new place. And the first thing you want to do is look at your emails and call your friends or your mother or your office. And you realise that actually, no, you need to look around. So the curiosity is I think it's what drives a lot of development in business, and what I admire in Rupert. I admire not only in him, in lots of people.
So what needs to be different in you or in Esther than in a man like Rupert Murdoch?
Oh, I don't think there's a difference between a man or a woman here. I think this is just about,
Yeah.
I mean,
individual styles.
Yeah, individual styles, but if I look at him and I look at the things that what I admire, and not only him, great people I've worked for, it's about trying to evolve, build, make a difference, do scary things but not be scared.
Right. Interesting. So that's sort of reinforcement of this. How to embrace gender rather than...
Yeah, but definitely, I mean, moving to Russia was definitely, and building Soup was also built on sort of, not frustration, looking at large corporations where the speed is much lower, but big decisions can actually quite easily be made. And I didn't want to work there anymore. I wanted to work in a place where I was sort of much closer to the customer. And you can make that difference. You can do the trial and error much easier. But it doesn't mean that they've got it wrong. I mean, we talked about MySpace quite a while today. Was that a wrong decision or the right decision? I mean, there's lots of things about it that actually were right at the time. In hindsight, it was integrated in the wrong way because they wanted to put their corporate sauce on top of it, and but also, even if they didn't put their corporate sauce on top of it, had they been able to evolutionize that product to the next level where Facebook needed to be, I mean, that's a really hard one to imagine. If there's, you look at the travel business again today, they're ready to be disrupted as far as I'm concerned, because actually we do the same thing now than we did 10 years ago. A new model needs to come out, and it's broadly.
You said that about LinkedIn today too.
Yeah. And but is Expedia able to deliver that new product? No, probably it's going to be another company that doesn't have the legacy systems and the legacy 800 engineers who are now working on every bit of the site. It probably needs to be a smaller team that can work with more.
So what about corporate ventures? And so is it like the worry when I read about corporate venture groups and the explosion of corporate venture groups is like, oh my God, I'm sorry that I remember 1989. The late 90s, 1999.
That was another prize. That was
late 99. That there's a lot of corporate venture, just too much money, and that was a bubble. Are we at that point again? I mean, we're just seeing the explosion of corporate venture again. I mean, or is it are you considering a corporate venture group? Is that something that you would pitch inside?
I did actually, and then halfway through the pitching, I thought, it's not my thing. I need to concentrate on this business. Right. It's part of that knowing, really focusing on 3 things rather than 10. I think corporate ventures, they definitely serve a purpose, not for every business, but I don't know how many of you here have worked for a large corporate and have left have
How
frustration.
many people here have worked for large corporate?
And we all know that the operating system of a large corporate is quite, we have the sales department and the marketing department and
Yeah.
the IT people over here who only budget, they create budget, but they're not necessarily enablers, and so that is quite rigid. And then you realize that you need to do something digital and something social. So social is easy, you give that to your marketing department and they recruit a social marketing agency and they create some Facebook posts and then you're done. But somehow there must be some nagging going on. Like I also need to create new things, and to create new things within this structure is not possible.
Right.
So maybe I should spend some time, some money, and buy some other stuff that could potentially disrupt my business. It is usually not about disrupting the business. I mean, as we all know, corporate ventures are there. One, for some businesses, you take the WPPs of this world, they have to buy 3 businesses every quarter because it helps their share price, and therefore corporate venturing is almost part of it's just another business unit that makes sure that you create new revenues and not by diversifying inside, but actually buying new. I think it comes down to leadership. If the CEO, and I'm not the CEO of a large corporate, but if the CEO understands that his business needs to evolve over time and knows where the vision is, then the corporate venture should fit the vision of where the business needs to go to. That's in the perfect world.
Okay, so
I do realize
if you have a question and you came here to learn something and ask that question, get your hand up because we're winding it down. Go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to know when you're refounding a company, or if you give the example of classmates, what is it that you look for to know that this company still has life, that you're willing to work with it, and what are the signs that this company's done, nothing can be done to bring it back?
That's a great question. I just had a board meeting with them actually after they've worked on it for 3 months, and it's going to be good. And I'll tell you why it's going to be good. Because the brand equity, there's real value in that brand, because people have, I could give you 10 brands, and some of those brands will bring a smile to your face, and some brands you think, not so sure, or some of them you're indifferent. This brand is definitely one that brings a smile to people's face, and they were able to bring it down to one proposition. I think what we try sometimes to do is if we're not really sure, we try a business that does 3 things. And if somebody comes to me with a business idea, and even though we don't have official corporate venturing, there's still lots of startups that come to me, and I've advised quite a few. And sometimes I think it's so easy, we should just say to people, so what question or what problem are you going to solve with your startup? And they sort of look at me and I'm like, oh, we do this and this and this and that. What is the core problem that you're going to solve? And only then can you actually position yourself in a way that people will remember you. I've got a friend of mine who started a beauty business, great business, and she explained to me what it was all going to do, and I sort of listened to her and I said, it's Avon 2.0. He said, what do you mean? She said, why? I said, well, because you use a network of women that present, like Stella and Dot, sell in people's homes. Don't bring the products because we can now ship it easily, orders online, ship it. So the 2.0 is it's all done online. And I was very pleased that she got some funding, quite a bit actually, by using the Avon 2.0. So really to force yourself to have that focus. I always say if I could explain it to my mother, and, she's a bright woman, but but she's not in the digital space. But if she gets it, then it means that I've got real focus and clarity on what we're trying to do.
Questions? Go ahead.
Yvonne?
Tina.
Let Tina go first.
Hi, I'm Tina, and I own a digital media company, and it's a B2B media company, a global company that meets the needs of businesses in relation to food safety. One of the challenges that I found in starting this business is the fact that there's not been a lot of information out there on how to grow a digital media company in the B2B space. So what advice can you give to someone like me in terms of finding some direction and maybe some guidance on that?
And you mean growth in terms of finding the right audience?
Not in terms
revenues?
of the audience. I've got the audience. It's just in terms of growing that business. I mean, I have established revenue streams and things like that, and I've had to, sort of reconfigure it. But I just don't know of anybody else that's doing this in a B2B kind of segment, category.
I need to ask you quite a few questions. So why don't we talk after the talk?
Okay.
Yeah, because I've looked at quite a few B2B businesses, and
So many moving parts.
yeah,
Okay.
there's so many moving parts.
Okay, go ahead.
But really good space to be.
Thank you. Very helpful.
You have to turn it on.
And which is, thank you. Thank you.
Just go ahead.
No, okay.
Just go ahead.
What are some of, you talked a lot about the content. What are some of the challenges and problems with content distribution to actually reach the target audience? Do you see, or are there in the marketplace?
It comes down to content creation. I just employed an editor-in-chief for this family history business, and she's an architect, and she's got the perfect profile in my mind because she understands the three-dimensional content creation in a three-dimensional world. And the way you explain that, I used to say to my editors, just write every headline with Britney Spears in it, and it will automatically get lots of traffic. Today, every headline should have Kim Kardashian in it, and you'll be fine. But really, the way you create the content ensures that you have many more hooks into Google. Thank you, Google. Making sure that it can be found. So I think content distribution starts with making sure you create content that can be found, and in your site needs to be your site, your platform, your blog. It needs to be found. And then when people are there, they need to find what they need to be able to find what they're looking for. And that the third part of distribution for me is to make sure you're connected. And if you look at sites that are not successful, usually one of those three questions doesn't get a positive result, because you can create an amazing, good-looking site with fantastic content, but if it's not connected, and I mean not just Facebook, but with relevant partners, and it's not SEO because the infrastructure, then you created a village in the desert, and there's no roads to it, and nobody can find it. So I think that it's hugely simplified, but there are three important questions to answer.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great.
Depends very much, and that's why also content today it's not just the editorial team. The organization of today is much more fluid, where your technology team has people who specialize in content, and your editorial team has people who specialize in technology. And that's what corporates actually struggle with, because they still have everything in buckets, because it's easier to manage for them.
Okay, two more. Dave?
So I run a local startup company here. Since you've been all around Europe and North America, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think the impact of physical location is on the chances of your success, by whatever criteria you define success, and outside the US, where you think the best startup ecosystems are?
Good question.
Great question. And we discussed this again today. I think physical location, if you get it right, your physical location is sort of your shop window. It is there, but you don't necessarily need to have it. And I mean, I'm running a business right now that needs to go global, and we have the inventory, but we don't have the audience in the key markets yet. And I've convinced myself I don't want to have to run a business where I need those locations locally, because my operating system needs to be scalable, and the operating system needs to be able to create a product that actually can be served everywhere.
Just touching on some points that you made tonight in tonight's talk, you referenced MySpace and how they started out okay, but they didn't evolve or iterate to the next version that they needed to be at. And then you talked about Facebook maybe coming in and taking that market share. And you said that LinkedIn maybe now is ready for there to be disruption in that area. So I'd be really interested in your opinion about where the internet ecosystem is heading. There's a lot of talk these days about big data, big data, big data. Is that the next iteration of the internet and where we should be looking to innovate? Or where's the next big wave coming from, in your opinion?
I mean, big data is, remember when everybody said this year is going to be the year of knowledge? 2004, 2005, 2006. It's really cool. I run a big data company. We've got petabytes of data. Really exciting. But we haven't got enough tools to actually go into the data to really make it relevant. Sure, you can sit on lots of data, but if you don't have enough tools to understand what the data actually means, it's not going to work. So it's a cool, fashionable thing to say. I think, I don't want to make myself look very old, but I've been in digital space for quite a long time, and I think things go in cycles. And
like fashion?
Yeah, and the sort of content was king, and then content was nothing, and content was king again. I think we need to think more about, we're all consumers, and what do we need? I mean, we need our tools and services to be evolving and to make them more relevant. And it's fascinating to read something over the weekend where it said that now on your iPhone it's really not cool if you have like hundreds of apps on your iPhone. And I think, thankfully, I never got hundreds of apps on my iPhone. It was far too complicated. And I don't play too many games. I've only got 3 pages of apps and I don't even have them in folders. Fantastic. I feel so, I'm the new fashion. So I think it is very tempting to sit here and say, well, I think it's going to go here and here and here. I think the key message is that if you sit on a business model and you think you're invincible because you've developed it and you think it's robust enough, somebody else will come in and disrupt your market. Monster, we all thought we were going to find our employees in years to come on Monster, and where's Monster? MySpace is this amazing thing. If you look at Facebook, it's very interesting because they continue to evolve over time, and I think, even though there's a lot of criticism about it, but their product development is amazing. Mark Zuckerberg is quite an amazing person, in having the pure customer focus, and dares to take the risk to make changes that people shout about. He doesn't. And we all want to, I'm not sure we all want to be like Mark Zuckerberg, but the message is more about the product you have today for your customer is only good enough for today, and make sure you have an infrastructure that allows you to scale globally or nationally if your market is national, but also allows you to be agile enough that when the customer tomorrow all of a sudden wants Angry Birds in 5 different colors, that you don't need 6 months to develop Angry Birds in 5 different colors, because in 5 months time it's already gone. Then it's out of fashion again. And that sounds lovely in theory. In practice, it's quite difficult to win. But that also makes sure that we get to work every morning thinking about new things to build. So I think it's more about your infrastructure and within your organization, and the new thing is the responsive operating system, to make sure that your organization is responsive, is agile enough to be able to respond to new trends, the new black, the new orange, the new mobile device, rather than developing stuff that needs to last forever. So it's how you make it, not what you make.
Okay, are you ready for the Startup Grind speed round?
Yeah.
All right, first, thank you to Faskins. Thank you to Shopify, who's one of our sponsors. Verizon has an idea competition that's a sponsor this evening as well, so please check that out. It's on a link to our website. Thanks again to Grow Your Biz. Thanks again to DMC, NACO, I'm missing a half a dozen people who really, really helped this evening, as well as our sponsors, and thank you for coming. Okay, start a grind speed round. What item do you own that you would never sell?
What item do I know? A very nice handbag.
Our last guest was Dutch, and he said, well, I'm Dutch, I'll sell anything.
This is a collector's item handbag.
Okay.
So nothing digital about it.
What is your most unusual skill?
I can do, I have a party trick. I can do a very good on my head stand in between two chairs. I won't do it now.
But later, for sure. Okay. What's more important, strength, speed, or stamina?
Stamina.
Hey, she's answering the questions. Okay, what historical figure do you most admire?
Black and white questioning.
I didn't write them.
Marco Polo, he discovered the world.
What's the best compliment you can receive?
That I still have an edge to understand where the new things are.
What's the best compliment that you give to others?
That they've really made a difference, and particularly those people who do things that I can't do. You know, I mean, you surround yourself with good people that do things that you can't do.
Who do you think does a good job?
You do a very good job.
Oh.
Yeah, Michael, I feel like I've been this morning, it's only 12 hours ago.
I know.
I knew nothing about the Toronto startup scene, and I mean, look at us now.
Well, I hope that you've met some people that you can connect with besides me. That's the objective. What's your favorite season?
Spring.
When was the last time you tried something new?
Today.
What was that?
I tried a new machine in the gym.
Huh? When did you have time to work out today? If you could have the attribute of any animal, what would you choose?
Attribute. Sleep.
The
The koala sleeps all the time.
I guess. Listen, thank you very much. Wow, so entirely voluntary trip from the UK to be with us this evening, and a marathon day, and I just really, truly hopefully you've got a connection to the city, a connection to Startup Grind, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.